the man himself in here who is dramatically changing and formulating and innovating inside of the pouches space, which I think basically at least half of all Western men with red blood flowing in their veins are big fans of. We must welcome to the show Matt Wan, co-founder and CEO of Sett. Let's go.
What an intro. I need to have you guys tee up every fundraising conversation I have going forward.
Matt,
we can do it.
We are open to that. We are very open to that, my friend. We appreciate you joining us and making time for us, my friend. Matt, you've got to back this up for us a little bit. We had Josh Payne of Open Sky with us recently, who is so big on pouches, betting on pouches big time. And I would love to know, man, your thesis for why the world is so hot on pouches now. And then of course we want to talk about Sett and what you guys are doing inside of this space, but why is it so hot right now? This form factor seems to be everything.
Yeah, so I'll back up if you don't mind. I got interested in this space when I was running my first company, which is a supplement business called Momentous. And we had a number of, I think it's fair to say, fairly influential thought leaders in the health and human performance space involved in that business. And they kind of turned me on to the idea that nicotine has nootropic benefits. And I had no experience using nicotine whatsoever, but I'm the archetype where if you tell me there's a performance benefit to be had, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Right? And I literally went and bought, this was before Zyn was a thing. So I went and bought Nicorette in the store, and
really,
it was okay. But what I found really interesting about it was you felt something right away. Yeah. And as you guys know from following the supplement space, there's just not that many substances where even if the science is good, you take it and you feel something right away. That's really limited in supplements. And, for a whole bunch of reasons, we didn't get there with Momentous on doing something in that category, which I think was still probably the right call, but it just stayed in the back of my mind. And so when I left my day job there, I then went to work in venture at Jazz, and we do all sorts of stuff around life sciences there, but occasionally stuff in consumer as well. And this sort of just stayed in the back of my mind. And, being in venture, pouches started to kind of catch on, whenever they did, right? You notice people taking these products. And I thought that was really interesting. And so what I was noticing was that there was sort of a shift in sentiment around nicotine that was probably difficult to measure. But I think what you saw was that people were starting to separate nicotine from tobacco. In the sense, nicotine, maybe pros and cons, but it's not tobacco, right? That carries all of the sort of serious health consequences associated with it. And so this business actually started because I was looking for an investment for Jazz in this category. And I couldn't quite find something that really kind of fit my criteria, got me excited, was a fit for us. But I found the opportunity to start this business instead. And I kind of just couldn't help myself. And so that's a long way of saying that how I got into it, I think is pretty closely tied into how a lot of other people have got into it too, in the sense that you have people who've always used nicotine and nicotine and tobacco, and they're looking for healthier ways to get that fix. And pouches are sort of seen as a healthier way to do that. And then the other cohort of people coming into the space are people who look at it through this functional lens, where they're sort of what I would call nicotine curious, in the sense that maybe they don't have a history of tobacco usage, but they've heard Huberman or Attia or these types of folks talk about nicotine. And so they're like, hey, I want to try this. And now, obviously a pouch is maybe a bit less intimidating than just, ripping darts at your desk.
Totally.
That's what Chris does. He just rips darts at his desk. Could you?
Maybe just I hear vacation darts don't count.
There we go. Hey, we'll take that, man. We'll take that.
Could you talk to us a little bit about, scaling this in the go-to-market? Because I think Momentous is a great, case study of you guys got in with Huberman and then that basically exploded the actual business itself. How are you seeing the go-to-market for you guys now? And then are there some creators that you really want to go after in this space as you move forward into 2026, the rest of it?
Yeah, it's a pretty good tee up actually, because you're correct in that Huberman's relationship to Momentous had a huge impact on our business. But I think the way the story mostly gets told most of the time is a little bit unfair to us in the sense that it makes it sound like we didn't have any business prior to that. We weren't a huge business, but I think we'd done 12 or 13 net the year before it launched. And so it wasn't like there wasn't anything working. The backdrop to it was we'd been in business for a few years. And I mean, I had no experience when I launched that business. And it took us a really long time to figure out the formula for like what a really good D2C product looked like.
Yeah.
And it was like our third or fourth product launch where we kind of got it, in the sort of light bulb went off. And that was our collagen product, where it had a really ritualistic nature to it. It lended itself really well to subscription. We'd done enough optimizations by that point to sort of have a really good funnel around subscription. And so it was the combination of Huberman coming in plus like the struggle, the 3+ years prior to that, of building a mousetrap that was actually quite effective, where we would have grown anyways, but Huberman made it, 300% instead of 80 or 100%. Right.
Yeah.
And that informs, to me, in a really significant way, the go-to-market process with Sett, because really what we were trying to engineer here, and what I've kind of been looking for with investments after that, is like, what are the types of products that don't necessarily need to have a Huberman in order to be wildly successful, where you look at those types of people and it's a nice to have, but it's not a must have, meaning that if you get it, great, and it's a huge accelerant, but we're going to be successful regardless of that, because, to sort of name a few, we've got, a shelf stable, high margin product. It has a ritualistic nature to it. So it lends itself well to subscription. It's low shipping weight. It has omni-channel potential in the sense that you can sort of validate it online. And then if it works, there's huge retail potential for it over time. I truthfully kind of like things that were in a little bit of a controversial category as well. I actually found that attractive about this particular category. And then there's some sort of other stuff below that too, but that's maybe less like, that's more of a strategic lens on it, as opposed to like a tactical, like, hey, this is how we set up our meta campaigns. But the experience sort of with Momentous and mostly what we did wrong in launching all of those products over the first 2 or 3 years was really informative in how we went to market with this business.
Nice.
I think this is so smart, Matt, because your learnings from Momentous and a great D2C product, the ritualism of it, the small package size, having high margins, all of those things. I mean, they absolutely seem totally baked into Sett. And I would love if you would just, not that you have to go 12 miles deep, but I would love to hear from you on the science of this, because, for me, a background on me, an enjoyer, appreciator of nicotine. If there is a better buzz, a better for me buzz that, get that same feeling, get the hit and the rush and the focus and all of those things. If it genuinely does exist, I mean, you've got a tiger by the tail, I feel, Matt. And so I'd love if you could just dig into that a little bit about, I think it's called serotonin. Is it? Is that the right way to pronounce it? Yeah, tell us about this a little bit.
Yeah, I'll always indulge a potential customer. So the story here, the story here is, again, I was looking for an investment here. And so mostly the types of companies that I was talking to, I won't name them, but they were nicotine pouch companies, right? And most of them were doing pretty well, but really what I was looking for was somebody that had something sort of unique or proprietary from a formulation perspective. as opposed to just branding it better. Not to say that can't work. Not to say that can't work, but that wasn't specifically what I was looking for. And I met this group of folks, mostly scientists, frankly, that were developing this product. It wasn't called Serotin at the time. They didn't have that name. And the story was basically, hey, we've got this really interesting thing. We think it's better in X, Y, and Z ways than nicotine. And that's basically it. We're kind of going through validation on this thing. And I was like, that's not that interesting. But I was, it was friendly conversation. They were nice folks, and just kind of stayed in touch with them. And then over the course of the next year, they kind of kept coming back with more and more data on the product. And the story here essentially is that this was not actually something that they synthesized originally. This was a compound that was synthesized, believe it or not, by Philip Morris back in, it would have been the late 70s or the early 80s, I think.
Wow.
And essentially what was going on at that time is that this is when the tobacco companies were getting scrutinized very heavily for burying the health effects of cigarettes. Wow. And so they set a number of their scientists out to basically look for healthier alternatives, because they were worried that nicotine itself might get banned in the US.
I see.
And of course, that's not what happened, but they developed and patented 20 or 30 different compounds, which had varying levels of, kind of interest or efficacy, if you want to think about it that way. But since nicotine didn't get banned, they didn't do anything with these things.
I see.
And 20 years later, these things rolled off a patent. And so this group that I was connected with had worked in the tobacco industry. They learned about this, and they picked up on what they thought was the most compelling of these compounds. Incredible. And essentially what it is a synthetic molecule. It's synthetically derived B vitamins, nicotinic acid in particular. And what you end up with is a molecule which is substantially similar in shape to that of nicotine, but chemically unique. So it's not nicotine by definition. But again, the shape is similar enough that it has different but very similar binding potential to what are called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, which is the part of your brain primarily that nicotine interacts with. And what really made me, the data that they ultimately presented to me and what made me lean in and say, hey, there's something really interesting here, was they did what's called a receptor binding affinity study, which is to say that they looked at the relative propensity for that molecule to bind to the different types of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors normalized against nicotine. And on the whole, it binds very strongly, but it doesn't bind particularly effectively to a specific one of those receptors. And it is a specific receptor that is believed to contribute to physical dependence symptoms, which is to say, like withdrawal symptoms in one way or another, right? And this is where I have to be very careful, because to be clear, we're not a nicotine replacement therapy. That's not the path to market for this. That's not the sort of approved type of claims that we have, but everything I said to you is true. And on top of that, because it's not a tobacco product, because it's not nicotine, we can, one, go to market without getting it approved as a tobacco product, and two, we can do whatever we want from a formulation perspective, meaning we don't have to private label somebody else's formula. We can use natural flavors and sweeteners. We can make sure the formula is pH neutral. And then in particular, the things that we do, those are, I would say, important to some consumers, but the things that you feel actually are the moisture level and pH are such that what's called the dissolution rate, meaning the rate at which you absorb it effectively, is materially slower than that of a nicotine pouch. And we also include L-theanine, which has very complementary effects to stimulants. In particular, with nicotine, actually has evidence in mice that it helps to mitigate certain withdrawal symptoms as well, which you, like, in theory, maybe you could add L-theanine to like a nicotine product, but again, you'd have to go through the multi-year process with the FDA in order to do that. And so the result is that you have this product that actually gives people what I would say is more like the satisfaction of nicotine. It's a very satisfying feeling, but it's not nearly as intense for most folks. And truthfully, there's probably a certain crowd of people that want the most intense version of a nicotine experience.
Yeah.
And, that's fine. We do have stronger doses and things like that, but ultimately it's still a sort of a more mild and prolonged experience relative to the equivalent dose of nicotine. And it's more appropriate for going on a podcast per se than it is like, preparing to ride a bull, let's say.
Well, I mean, just to dive into that, I mean, who are the, kind of perfect ICP you're trying to go after? Who's the demographic that you're trying to go after? Because I totally agree with you that I think it is totally different from the normal kind of nicotine user. I think you live more in that kind of biohacking world. You live more in the Huberman style world. Are you just going off after all of the SF tech bros and just trying to be kind of akin to them? Or is there anyone you have in mind? There we go.
There we go,
He's
Matt.
rocking.
Let's
He's
go.
rocking.
Matt. Lock in, Matt.
It's interesting you say that. So we thought when we launched the brand that we would have more success with folks that were on sort of the biohacker end of the spectrum. Again, I call them kind of the nicotine curious, people that were really using it as a cognitive tool. And really, that's probably more like 20% of our customers. I would say the lion's share of our customers are, again, what I would call the health conscious nicotine user. So maybe they would say that they're using nicotine for the cognitive effects, but most of these people have been using nicotine and tobacco products for a long time. And they are somewhere on the spectrum of health conscious. I wouldn't go so far as to call them biohackers for the most part, but they use nicotine and tobacco products. They have used them for a long time, but they go to the gym, they take supplements, they probably have a device or two, they care about how they sleep. And it's actually kind of like contrary to what the perception is of tobacco users for the most part. But there are a lot of these people, again, that are like, hey, I get some utility out of this. I like the way it makes me feel, but I'm trying to be very conscious about what I put in my body and how I can feel better day to day.
Matt,
but that's probably 70 to 80% of our customers fit that archetype.
Well, it feels like you're reading the mail. It feels like you're reading the group chat of me and all my college friends is what it feels like you're doing, Matt. Man, this is incredible. This is incredible.
Unreal. Unreal.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense why this didn't exist before, but man, this if I could buy stock in it, I mean, this thing seems like it's going to the moon, Matt. I mean, it's crazy. Zen pouches, particularly, being consumed less and less. But I think the market is growing more. I know they've got a lot of competitors. But man,
Zen has competition coming in now, but the category itself of like total nicotine pouch consumption is still just in absolute rocket ship.
Yeah. Man, this is so fascinating, Matt. And I know this is,
and maybe I shouldn't say it, but like it's actually better for us. Like the more people that are like accustomed to using pouches rather than vapes and things like that. That's actually better for us. So that's always what we've said is like, hey, I mean, I don't believe that 10 years from now nobody's going to be consuming nicotine. That's not my belief or what I think is realistic at all. So it's actually better for us the larger the pouch category is.
I totally agree. Matt, tell me this, like, I know like this is not all you do. I mean, your principal over at Jazz, I mean, you're sourcing deals, you got a number of people you're involved with. Brother, what does your day look like, man? I mean, because I wonder, like, how do you do all this, brother?
How are you doing this?
I don't know. It's what I enjoy doing, right? Like, I think it's, the type of thing where, even if it didn't, pay particularly well, this is sort of what I find interesting. But the real truth is like, I spend the vast majority of my time on this business day to day. That's really my day-to-day job. There was a period where, I would meet 30 new companies every week for Jazz, but since starting that company, that's not the case. And so it's actually been really nice in the sense that I have a small number of portfolio companies that I work with at the board level for Jazz. And most of the time they're not that time intensive. Sometimes, you know, stuff's going on and it's more time than others. But for the most part, as a board member, you can't actually do that much to help them. And so you're kind of just like trying to stay up to date. And then I probably meet with, on average, one new company that's raising money a week now. And again, I would probably want to do that even if I wasn't involved with Jazz still, because I find it really interesting.
That's awesome. Matt, I got to ask selfishly, being a biohacker guy myself and just following the industry very aggressively, I got to know, because you're in biosciences, you're following all this stuff. What is your thought on peptides and that entire market and what's going on and the future with that? Are you bullish on it, or do you absolutely hate it?
I'm extremely bullish on it. But I also, like, you know, it's not purely good or bad. Like, I hate certain sectors of it, but like, I think the potential for it is incredible. And I think like net, it's really positive. And I think it aligns with a really compelling vision of the future, where I think that the vast majority of people are going to be able to attain, you know, much more healthy lifestyles and, you know, what was previously sort of like a difficult to achieve physique. And so, like, something that we like to like kind of toss around every now and then is an interesting question is like, what will be considered high status from like a physical standpoint once it's like very easy to be like skinny and muscular? Like, what is it after that? Like, how do you then signal to people that you're better than them? Right. Which I don't necessarily know the answer to, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's so funny.
Great question. And if you guys don't mind, I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much of your time, but just because we're on peptides, there's a really incredible company that you guys should absolutely have on the podcast.
Tell us.
It's a portfolio company of Jazz when we've worked with from the time it was really a science project. It's called Evolve.
Evolve.
And they have you had them on already?
No, we'd love to.
No. Incredible company. They are ripping. And it started as a science project, basically, where this guy, Corey, who's a PhD, and his work centered around basically training agricultural products, plants, to express particularly complicated peptides.
Really?
And so at the time it came, when we met him, the idea wasn't even to build a consumer brand, which is what it is now. It was, this is potentially a vastly cheaper way of producing biologics, which is the class of drugs that, you know, GLP-1s are in. And to do that, you normally need what's called a cell line, which is very expensive equipment to produce. You're actually, again, living cells producing these things. And what they've been able to do is get agricultural products. In the case of their first product, it's yeast, but we've been successful in different types of lettuce and spirulina and things like that before too, to actually create these bioactive peptides that again are it's made in a plant. It's a genetically modified plant, but you're able to create these peptides that are not only effective, but they pass through the gut effectively as well. And so you basically have maybe I should be careful about how I'm using language here exactly. But you have a supplement, you have a capsule that you can buy without a prescription, right? And their first product is, you know, has GLP-1 agonist effects. Then and maybe I'm not allowed to say what the next couple are, but they have a very compelling pipeline of what these other use cases for the products are as well. So you should have them on.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's crazy. If you're telling me consumers are going to be able to get GLP-1s in the form of a pill without a subscription, when you boil all that down,
without a prescription,
without a prescription,
that's crazy. I mean, that is just bananas.
I'm looking at it right now and very impressive. Yeah, activate your body's natural GLP-1 in 4 hours. 12 plus pounds lost up to in 8 weeks. I mean, yeah, we want to talk with him, Matt. We got to have him on the show, brother.
He's probably pretty smart. He has a PhD. I would imagine he's pretty smart. He's probably got some. You know what I mean? He probably knows a little more than us.
Matt, brother, we
more
love
than
what
I
you're
do.
doing,
That's for
man.
sure. He'll probably come in and frame it in a much more compelling way than I did. But
Nice.
yeah, if you want to hear about peptides, talk to Corey and Becca.
Around
Absolutely.
750 fewer calories consumed per day without restrictive dieting. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
We've got to have him on. And Matt, brother, we appreciate you joining the show and making the time. And brother, we love what you're doing with Sett and what you guys are doing inside of your portfolio. And we look forward to meeting Evolve and getting them on here. And brother, we're going to be following, and we got to have you back. Once Sett goes to Mars, we got to have you back, and we got to talk about it more, man. We appreciate you joining us.
That'd be very nice of you. I enjoyed being on. You guys have great energy. We're launching some new products in June, so that'd be a good time. Late June, maybe like July would be a good time.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Late June, July. We'll set it up, brother. We appreciate you, man.
Great, guys. Thank you.